Hello, my name's Mervyn Stutter, and every year since 1992 I have hosted my own daily showcase of Fringe talents at the Edinburgh Festival. It's a showcase of performance pieces and interviews, but as there was no Fringe this year, I decided to keep the interviews going online. For all news and updates, why not subscribe to the channel? It's free to do so. So, today I shall be chatting to Christine Bovill. Christine has only recently been nominated for Best Female Jazz Soloist of the Year at the Scottish Jazz Awards 2020. But for Fringe audiences, she's best known for her interpretation of the Chanson Francaise in her classic shows Piaf and Paris. So, ladies and gentlemen, would you please welcome Christine Bovill. And hello, Christine.
Hello, Merv.
Whereabouts in the world are you?
You're so far away. I'm in Scotland in an undisclosed location. No, I'm by the sea. I'm in Ayrshire.
How wonderful.
And I'm a little home by the sea, and it's a windy day. But you'll probably be in the gorgeous tropics of Bournemouth.
Oh, yeah, absolutely, palm trees everywhere. But just I'm by the sea. You're by for me, being by the sea has made lockdown much easier than if I was in the middle of a city. Did you find that?
100%, especially because I'm new to the sea. You know, I've been a Glasgow girl all my adult life, and living right on the front with this huge expanse of water has been so important for my mental health, because if I'd been living in a very built up residential area, even in a city with parks, no, this is, and I've got a little dog, so beach walks in isolation has been, it is, nature's healing balm.
Oh, indeed. And let's assume that the creativity is enhanced by such an environment, or not?
Well, one would, I don't know. Leonard Cohen says, if I knew where you go in search of the good songs, I'd go there more often. I've been doing a lot of recording. I actually have, look, I have in front of me, above me for inspiration, is a photograph of the man himself, my big writing influence. I've been doing a lot of recording with a great pal of mine, Simon Wallace, a London pianist, who has all the alchemy to know how to mesh up her two recordings, video and audio, and that's kept me going. That's quite alien to me in a way, in that it reminds me how much of a live performer I am, because generating your own energy into a little mobile phone is agony, but what can we do? I've done a couple of virtual concerts. I'm doing one on Friday, but yeah.
I saw some of the Simon and you singing online, and what was a joy for me, because I know you from Edinburgh, that's where we first met, and I know all the huge shows you've had up there, the Piaf, the Paris, and the latest one, I think, Tonight You Belong to Me, which we'll look at later. But to hear you singing other people's songs on a much wider, there's jazz, there's Cohen, there's all sorts. I mean, you basically you sing anything, don't you? Really?
I am a musical. I won't say that word. Yes, I say.
You're a jukebox.
No, I grew up. The family were real folkies, and it was Dylan and Cohen and early rock and roll. And then my journey into jazz was my own little young girl journey, and very old music. But oh yeah, everything. I mean, I have Life as a Troubadour is older stuff, is chanson, is all of that. But Christine Bovill, songwriter, is much more influenced with my guitar, writing on my guitar by the great songwriters.
Well, let's look at that. You started. You said the family were folky, so it wasn't just for me. I mean, my parents didn't play music, although there was on the grandparents there was music, and for me, I was forced into piano lessons, which I didn't enjoy. Then did rock and roll burst, and I just grabbed a guitar, and that was that. Then I went into folk. But you were surrounded by folk singer family, or?
Yes, both parents sang, played the guitar. My dad played the guitar. The whole family are very musical, and we grew up on a daily diet of Everly Brothers and Bob Dylan. Everly Brothers are the gods. I saw them 5 times in concert. And the three of us, 3 daughters, all became. My little sister is a music teacher in a high school. She plays every instrument. My big sister is extremely musical, used to teach classical guitar. We all did go into teaching, but I did languages and literature. My sister did English and philosophy. But music is always just literally, it's in the aura all the time. And then I quit teaching, of course, to do it full time.
Yeah, yeah. Now let's stay with the folk thing, because Scotland obviously has a very strong folk tradition.
Yes.
Did you? But you've only mentioned so far sort of the singer-songwriters of the early '60s. Probably Dylan as well. The guys that came out the cafe culture of New York or Greenwich Village. These guys who Tim Buckley, or they're terrific songwriters and singers, but contemporary. Did you indulge the folk, the traditional?
No, not Irish, yes, but not so much Scottish, but a lot of traditional, the family being of Irish origins, a lot more traditional Irish folk, some Scottish stuff that you would maybe do at school, but no, I don't know a huge amount of really old Scottish folk music. I'm sorry to say, beautiful as it is. So, no, the answer is more kind of the folk revival, isn't it, really?
Yeah.
And but the respect for the lyric is all in our family, and everyone being kind of more linguists as well as music. So great storytelling.
But you're alluding to a time which was the time of the singer-songwriter, some of the popular American names I've mentioned. So you got into songwriting on the guitar as a folk club person.
How did I do this? This was weird because it was when I decided I was coming out of teaching after having done it for about 6 years. And I stayed in teaching on and off, obviously, to pay my bills. But I only started writing in 2004. Then I won the Glasgow Festival of Songwriting, which was more traditional folky, with a song of mine called Lighthouse Keeper. That is probably more kind of, traditional singer-songwriter. It's not that real pure folk.
No.
But then I recorded my first album, which had folk influences.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, because I was kind of assuming the teenage years would be the folk years, but you came to it a bit later.
Yeah, well, it was always there. Teenage years for me, 13, 14 was more. Remember the Singing Detective?
Oh yes.
All of that, the ink spots. Ella Fitzgerald, discovering Edith Piaf, I discovered Billie Holiday at the same time, and the whole songbook, Sinatra. But old vintage jazz, even before the kind of big stars of American songbook, 20 stuff, which was very Americana folk. That's played into the 20s show as well. So it's all in there.
So you were collecting vinyl, a jazz vinyl.
From the age of 13. From the age of 13, wow. I was collecting old ink spots. I was collecting the Mills Brothers.
Oh, great.
Which made me very popular at school in the 80s.
Yes.
We're so cool, Christine.
You had to run home and hide in your bedroom and play your jazz vinyl. Did you get into jazz singing then?
Yes, that was when, really mid-teens is when I started to become obsessed with that music and shape. And then at university, I got my first professional singer's job as a jazz singer in Glasgow at the Inn in the Green.
So what kind of band was that?
That was me and a piano player.
Oh, right.
I came across, do you know, this is weird, you should see this. I'm looking at old photographs and I came across this. He is no longer with us, and his name is Sid Brown, and he was my regular pianist for 16 years, and he was the first to do Piaf with me in 1995, and he was the funniest, loveliest, world-class jazz pianist, and I miss him every day.
Well, since you mentioned Piaf, we should, let's go there, because I don't know about, yes, in your life it must have been the big moment. There was two moments. One, discovering her, and then the show and the effect that had on your career. I know you mentioned how you discovered her in the show, but let's quickly look at that bit of the story.
Very quickly, hating French at school, hating school. All I wanted to do was listen to my old dusty vinyls. I was bright enough I was academic, but I didn't like it. And my teacher hated me as much as I hated him. But an old friend of the family gave me a record at 14, knowing of my love of old music, of Edith Piaf. And that's where the obsession began. I said, no, thanks. I hate French. I don't want to listen to French. And he said, but Saidi is sung in English. Listen to the second song in Saidi. It's called No Regrets.
And that was that. For me... oh, hang on, we got a bit of echo on my voice now. That's really irritating. It'll disappear. Oh, it's gone. I had a similar experience. I mean, I was okay with French, but somebody played me this album. I was outside of the family, like your experience too. And I didn't have to hear the English. I just heard the French. I didn't understand it, but like you, I think it touched an emotional nerve. I just fell in love with the voice, and I kind of understood it without understanding it. If you get my meaning, it was
So many people refer to Piaf in those terms. You don't really need, if you can move someone to tears without, it's like great opera, isn't it?
yeah, yeah.
Without needing to know the libretto, then that there's something in there, and bearing the very depths of her soul when she sang. But of course, for me, the interest that it piqued for me, being a little obsessive, meant that I was suddenly thrust, in spite of myself, into a world of language and culture and Paris and France. And it gave me an identity at 14, 15. And I started working harder at French and did a 5-year degree because of that record.
Who knew?
Yeah.
Oh, here comes the echo again. I'm so sorry. Something to do with the line. They call it chanson or chanson francaise, but of course, French song has been going for centuries. What is it about that little time, that epoch of song, chanson francaise? It's got its own title.
It does. Chanson is the generic word for song in French, but chanson with a capital letter, française, is a coinage almost of that golden period from the 20s through to the early 60s, before rock and roll really took over, that is crystallized. It's a golden era of writing and performing and exploring every aspect, every gamut of the human condition, human emotion, where you have a 3-act play within the course of a 3-minute song. That's the first thing. No subject off limits, way ahead of its time. Secondly, the songs are still sung within the rhythms of the French language. Yeah. Once rock and roll came across to France, the perfect language of pop is English. Songs to this day in French are sung within the rhythms of the English language. If you listen to Celine Dion sing in French, it's an English pop song, American pop song in French. Whereas then the rhythm, the loyalty to the language is there musically. So that's why for me, people like Aznavour, Jacques Brel, Trenet, Piaf, all of these, it was a golden period of writing and beauty and poetic aesthetic.
Now, Piaf was, once she became successful, was looking for songs. But she was very kind of strict about the content, wasn't she? It had to have love and death, and wasn't she very particular?
Composers and lyricists would move in for 2 weeks. If they're working on new material and Piaf never ever slept at night. She hated the daytime and the night. She slept during the day, and she worked them through and inspired them. And she was part of the process, but she never took the writing credit unless she had physically written the song. And composers, up until the end of their life, said the inspiration after she went was just impossible to find. She was the source, the font of this art. And and driving them, she loved to go back to the old sleazy Montmartre of her youth. She loved them to find different ways to die in the name of love.
That's what I meant.
It was a tragédienne, réaliste, yes.
Yeah. Yes, I was just thinking the Piaf was a show you put together, and what I like about that show, Christine, is that not only is the singing absolutely, for me, outstanding, but all your intros and all your shows, the intros are factual without being dry. I've got a CD of yours, which I was listening to the other day, and there's you telling me about the song beforehand. Well, it's not party music, because I want to listen to the story. And it's very informative how you build up the story to the song. Now, you put this show together, and it was huge. You played it. Did you first play it in the Spiegel tent in Edinburgh?
No, actually, to get back to that original point you made, that is as much my shtick as singing, really. Having been an English teacher as well, it's as important that I sing in the original language, but therefore must set the scene as beautifully as I can. But I refuse to be tied into a script, because you're getting so much energy from an audience. How things come out in every show will vary, and I want that fluidity and naturalness described, because I know in my head about this song. My very first big sellout, putting the show on the map, was actually the National Library of Scotland on George Forth Bridge in Edinburgh, which sold out. We had 10 concerts and it sold out, and managed to pique the interest of David Bates of the famous Spiegel Tent. And that was my home from home for years.
Well, it's a perfect show for the Spiegel Tent. The Spiegel Tent. Tell us about the Spiegel Tent. One, you can tell us what it's like to play it, but just describe it from an audience point of view as well.
So the famous Spiegel Tent is over 100 years old. It's a Belgian built. It's a where I play in Berlin is exactly the same. It's a little round, wooden and mirrored, beautiful little concert venue of maybe 360 seats, and the stage. But it's all this old stained glass. It is exquisite, and it's built for the purpose. It's taken back down and shipped back to Australia. And this famous Spiegel Tent, the original one, saw Marlene Dietrich perform there at the Edinburgh Fringe during the Second World War, just after. Jacques Brel performed there. And so it is so pan-European, it's so beautiful, but it's so intimate. And you're right, it felt so perfect.
You were totally at home in there. I used to slip in at the end of a day and catch your late show. It was stand in the back with a drink, just slipped in the back. Just a wonderful thing. And you had one of your, just to say, the Spiegel Tent is Flemish for mirror, Spiegel Tent. And that's why the wooden struts that hold it up are all covered in small mirrors. Yes. And there's booths around the side, isn't there? Which you can imagine back in the day when it was in the carnival and those booths with the curtains.
Yes, but for other
certain amounts of other enjoyments. Yes. So what was I going to say? Spiegel Tent. Yes. Oh, in the Spiegel Tent. That's what I was going to say. You had a great moment because tell the Charles Dumas story. What happened there?
The first year we blew it out the park. It sold out at the famous Spiegel Tent. And the next year was the 50th anniversary of Piaf's death, and I had been interviewed on BBC Radio 4's Soul Music programme alongside the composer of No Regrets when they were dismembering the song and discussing it as they do on this series. And off the back of that, Charles Dumont, the man who wrote the music of the song, Piaf's great friend and last composer, agreed to make the journey from Paris and play for me at the piano on stage at the famous Spiegel Tent in Edinburgh one night. We put him up at the Scotsman, and he was actually quite nervous. No one knew. Half a dozen people, my family and friends, knew it was happening. You couldn't get near the place, and I was almost finished the show. I'd sung Mon Dieu, still had a couple to do. I was told the usual part of this story about Nitikva, and he's here tonight.
Whoa! I was there.
You were there.
I was there. What a piece of luck!
Young 82 he was, and at his suggestion we sang the song they wrote together, Les Amants, and then he went to the piano, played No Regrets, and I had to get up and sing.
Yeah. No, what a moment.
That really happened, Merv, did it?
Yes.
You said you were there, because I see it and I still think, Christine Bovill, did that really happen to you?
Yeah. And you played the Spiegel Tent many times, of course. It is the famous Spiegel Tent because there are modern...
There are many. That's the one and only original.
Yeah. So if you're a fan of Spiegel Tents, go for the famous Spiegel Tent because there's many copies out there. Beware of imitations. But your show then took off. I mean, I can see because of Facebook, and we all keep in touch on Facebook, that you tour relentlessly in Europe, Ireland, of course, as well. But Europe in particular, how does it go for a Glaswegian singer to sing Piaf in France? How do they take that?
I've only done it. I have only done 2 concerts in France, and it was last year. After all these years, and the La Petite Écossaise qui chante en français, they were wonderful. What's been more fascinating though is a Glaswegian from Scotland singing in French to Germans in Berlin. I've been doing that for 2.5, almost 3 years.
Yeah.
That has been at Barrière de Vernouf, which is a Spiegel Tent, which is almost as beautiful. In the heart of Berlin, just close to Kurfürstendamm. That has been the revelation of my life. The Germans, the Berliners, I am speaking in English. I sing a little bit in German, having learned it parrot fashion. That has been extraordinary. It's taken me to Vienna earlier this year. Lockdown. I had a week of concerts in Berlin just before the pandemic really hit. and hope to go back soon. But I'm very, when I think of those things, and it's been really hard to pick myself up sometimes, just get through with these lovely warm memories, but missing working so much, those moments, how lucky I am.
Well, yes, and also your shows are wonderful, but it's also a lovely genre, the cabaret. If it's just you and a pianist, I'm not surprised the Germans because they have a huge history in cabaret. They understand that form very well. So there's you.
And the thing is that they laugh at everything. Humor is it's a big thing in my show. The last time I did a concert, I had this lovely little shimmery shawl thing on, and this happens to me a lot. I went on and it was inside out. I wear my clothes on stage inside out a lot, and halfway through I'm mindful of a label, and it takes all my concentration. Michael could see it, and he didn't bloody. So I went off stage mortified. I came back on after the interval, and I said, "Did anyone else notice?" And yeah. I had a pair of shoes on that I bought in Anello and Davide in London. The famous bespoke shoemakers who made shoes for the Beatles, those boots in Marilyn Monroe. And I had these 1920s shoes. So I said, "Listen, can I make it up for you? Let me tell you the story of my shoes." These kind of things. They love this.
Yeah.
And there's no script there. They love this kind, because I am quite kooky and when I make mistakes, I just run with it. So,
well, if someone on stage is genuine and likes to chat, the audience get it, and that's lovely because it is a warm, intimate exchange. You can chat to your audience. Did I wear this? Yes, you did. We all saw the label, all that stuff. It's lovely.
Yes.
But you basically do play with a piano player. So do you take with you, or do you get one pianist over there?
99% of the time, I take them with me. In Ireland, I've been lucky. Seho Lee, the Korean pianist who worked with me a lot, he teaches at the Royal College of Music in Dublin. But generally speaking, Michael Rolston often comes with me.
Yeah.
Michael, he's just...
Now, Michael is
I've just been given a gig in London next month, and he's playing with me at Waterman's in Brentford next month. So it's the 20th show, and I'm playing in Zedell again in November. I'll miss Shelley's, but Michael is.
He's one of the best. He plays for a lot of cabaret singers, and what I like about Michael's accompaniment, and you must appreciate this a lot, is he often extemporizes following where you go with a song. You
can be the best pianist in the world and not a brilliant accompanist. It's an art form, and he is. Yeah.
Well, you mentioned the 20 show because not only did you do Piaf, let's move through chronologically, then you expanded and came back to the Fringe. Well, that's where I saw you, obviously, but maybe you did it elsewhere first with Paris, which was looking at all those other singers you mentioned just a moment ago. There's a whole panoply of French writers and singers, and you explore all of them.
You awarded me with.
I did give you an award.
My award-winning show.
Quite right too. Long overdue, Christine. Tell us about Paris then quickly, and then.
Paris was just casting the net wider. Paris was waiting to happen for a long time, and a lot of people who followed my career, Merv, consider it my best work or their favourite show, just because Piaf, of course, is in there, and we can't get away from those delicious, huge songs of Piaf. But there's all that other golden stuff from the golden era. And I've chosen songs that very often started off Life in French but became huge hits in English. Mm-hmm. And what's lovely is that so many audiences didn't realise, My Week started off in French, What Now, My Love, Plaisir d'amour, okay, but, there are so many
songs. Aznavour does English, doesn't he?
There's I never tired of. I did a Paris show, a virtual concert. I'm doing a virtual concert this Friday night on Facebook.
Oh, right.
A bit of everything. But I did the Paris show in July, online on Facebook, a live concert. So that was 2016. We launched that, and that's what I did in Berlin first. That really took off.
And then you moved to the 20s. The Roaring 20s.
That's really going home for me, even before Piaf.
Well, now I get that from what you've told me. That was new to me. I didn't realise that was almost your first love period.
Yeah. So, and that's as much a narrative. I spent 7-8 months writing that show and just dipping my toe into the most important moments of largely America in the 20s. It was an American decade from the end of the Great War to the crash. And the credible, insane, tacky, beautiful, awful party that it was. And despair turned on its head, as Fitzgerald called it, with those songs, those incredible beautiful songs, and then finishing on "Oh My God, What Was Ahead," and the incredible truth that there is nothing new under the sun 100 years later. How pertinent so much of the show is, particularly actually in this time of isolation. So that's what I'm doing. I've got 7 concerts in London in January, but that's what I'm doing next month in Waterman's.
No, well, you're quite right. I watched a documentary on the 20s, Paris 20s, Josephine Baker and all the rest, and lovely black and white film of people partying out of their heads, all the young people just going nuts. And you can feel that energy now out of the lockdown kind of. There's a rave culture, which probably is not advisable in terms of a pandemic, but you can feel that energy of just wanting to get out and party. Talking of now and rave culture and all the rest of the stuff that's going on, and people gathering together advisably or not advisably, social bubbles, social distancing, mask wearing, all the rest of it. And yes, gigging. You're doing a gig in Waterman's down in. I know it well. Used to live on the Thames near there. But how are they going to set that up? Cabaret tables is good for you, of course.
I'm not sure it is. The theatre is such a beautiful theatre. I've played there a few times. It's a socially distanced, so there'll be fewer numbers, but they're going ahead. I think it's just the thing is, if we can go into pubs and restaurants and planes, we can sit a few meters apart and watch a show with the mask on, even if there's no interval. If we do a straight through hour and 15 or something, fine. So that's happening, and I think that's effectively it. It's just sort of probably people. I don't know if they'll have to sit with masks on. You don't in restaurants and bars so far, but I'm just delighted. What's in a way a little bit easier for someone like me is that if theatres are hiring in a show, it's not a big cast. It's a one-woman show with a piano player. So, and safe distance in terms of, I know the whole projection thing, so I'll probably be upstage a little bit further than I would be normally. But,
absolutely. And if we're talking...
It felt like I was brought back to life last week. It was only last week when Jan wrote to us, and I was just over the moon.
Yeah, social bubbles. Social bubbles, social bubbles and cabaret tables work well. You can come as a party of 4 or 5 or 6, whatever, and sit round a table, and it is a perfect environment for your show, for comedians. Exactly. I really don't know quite how theatre copes with all of this, with cast, etc. But for the cabaret performer and the comedian, you are little units, and you can go out. There's a pianist. Hopefully, you're both self-isolated, or do you keep a distance? That's fine,
We always do. I mean, the thing is, even theatres often have studios or even large bar areas. I think until lockdown is completely over or a vaccine comes, I think even using that kind of space for cabaret is perfect. Zedel has got a capacity of just over 80. So when I play there, it's maximum 44 cabarets, and you've got to book the whole table. So people of 4 or 2, but they're also doing a live stream. You pay a ticket to see it live online, and that might help as well. Obviously, because it's got to be. I've got to get to London from Glasgow and stay in a hotel and all the rest of it. So it's got to be financially viable. So.
I know that's the downside, isn't it? That theatre structure.
I've done well with Brentford. Actually, the cheapest flight I got was BA, and I've got down and no problem. So yeah.
But the theatres themselves, you've got theatre costs, staffing, rents, whatever, all the structural stuff of theatre budgets. Then you've got artists' budget, and then you've got half the audience only, perhaps, or sometimes a third.
We're all aware it'll be a lesser fee, all the rest of it. But I said to Wilton's, if I have to sing in the rain in a clown suit, hire me. I'm doing it. Yep. I just want to sing. I don't want to sing into a bloody phone anymore, I
think the clown suit's in the contract now, by the way.
I do it. I would.
Well, I do. I think even for theatre, when I can't think my mind back to in the 70s when I started out in theatre, in community stuff, we used to play people's halls, community centres. It was flat. Yes. You put up a roster for a little bit of height maybe, but it wasn't proper theatres in proper rows. I think we probably have to go back to that sort of warehouse approach and community.
Some of these can be the most rewarding. I have played for all the opera house in South Korea. These, the Dublin Olympia. I played in big hall. I love intimate venues and sometimes folk clubs and things out in the middle of nowhere, where people don't have the same choice of things, and they attend these things religiously, and they are so appreciative of any acts that come. I love playing smaller. I have no
Just a minute.
deep expectations.
You've just thrown in South Korea.
Yeah.
You did a gig in South Korea. Which show? Piaf, was it? No.
That was Piaf Centenary. I was in the Opera House in Seoul with
Whoa.
a symphony orchestra.
What?
I had guest opera singers on my Piaf show. I was there for a week. They flew me over. Piaf, I don't know. Yes, it happened, and it was.
Who organises the symphony orchestra and all the parts and how to play and
a whole group within the Opera House, a whole group, and a professor of music in Seoul wrote the overture for me, and I will never ever forget that as long as I live. It was worth the 14-hour flight.
My Lord, that is amazing.
Actually, they booked me to go Glasgow, London at 9 in the morning, and my flight London Seoul was 9 at night. So I had 12 hours in transit before a 14-hour flight, but it was glorious.
But a South Korean symphony orchestra. That's up there with the Spiegel tent of Charles Dumas.
I stood in the wings, and I had prepared in order to in Korean, hello is annyeonghaseyo, and in my head I'm saying onion said hello, onion said hello. That's my biography.
Wonderful. Christine, it's an absolute pleasure talking to you. We've gone through Piaf, Paris. These are the big solo shows. Tonight You Belong to Me, which is the Roaring Twenties one. Another show on the way?
I'm thinking about a new show. I'm thinking about, while leading up to Christmas, I may as well write, but I need to get my third album written.
Okay.
I've got booked everywhere. I'm in my little den here. So I'm trying very hard to do that, and maybe write another show.
It's very strange because when people first hear you, I've heard people say, people do Piaf. I know one not far from where I live, and she just puts on the vibrato thing. And a lot of people who sing Piaf, they go, yeah, well, she's just put that on. The pleasure of watching you sing other people's songs, like with Simon recently, was to go, no, that is just a natural vibrato in your voice.
It's always been there, and I can't control it. I have had a natural vibrato my whole life. It's just one of those things, and therefore lent itself well. That this girl, it was fate that I should discover Chanson.
I know.
Which,
well, it's wonderful. It all came together beautifully. Christine Bovill, what a pleasure talking to you. Hopefully I'll see you next year.
Thank you.
If not down here at the Shelley Theatre, probably not. We'll see you at the Fringe.
Right. I see you at the... I will be there. We will be back at the Fringe.
We will. Christine, lots of love. Bye now.
Thanks. Bye, Merv. Thank you. Bye. Bye.
Well, that was jazz singer, cabaret singer and songwriter Christine Bovill. There'll be more interviews coming up soon, so why not subscribe here? It's free to do so. I'll see you then. Bye.